Hello, hello, hello. I'm your host, Charles Taylor, and this is another episode of my podcast that I'm calling Life as a Beat Maker. I am a beat I am a beat maker. I produce under the name Life's Apprentice, and yeah, I'm just a kid out here living life. I guess I can't call myself a kid anymore because I am a father. So yeah, that's kind of me in a nutshell in this moment. But before we go any further, I do want to say that this podcast episode is inspired by my Lyrical Lounge instrumentals playlist. So usually I would shout out my Lyrical Lounge playlist on Spotify and name the tracks of the week that I have added to that playlist that have kind of been my inspiration for the last week. But you know what? Today, this past week, Spotify did not recommend anything that was worthy of being put onto that playlist. If you didn't already know, go to Spotify and check out the two playlists that I have. The one is called the Lyrical Lounge. This is the one that I'm promoting the most, but I have a secret one that maybe you'll only see here on this podcast. And this is just basically the same exact thing Spotify recommends through their weekly discovered playlist. I filter through that and like the things that are dope. And if I think that those deserve those songs that I like, if they're good enough to be put onto these playlists, then they make it on. So this one is specifically for instrumentals, although there are still some vocals in these songs that you may hear sometimes. Primarily speaking, they are very heavy on the instrumental side, or the enjoyment that I get listening to these songs stems from the instrumentals for sure. So yeah, that's kind of the playlist there, and I'm gonna keep that guy up there as we move on. So that's the playlist, but also if you don't really know how to do the whole following on Spotify, which is a little bit confusing, not gonna lie, then I do have an Instagram page as well. Of course, all these links are going to be in the description down below. Instagram, I believe, is Lyrical Lounge Live. So yeah, follow me there, and I'm gonna post the songs that get added to the playlist each week. Maybe do some polls and stuff like that. Take in recommendations. That's one thing I definitely want to do in the future, is take in suggestions for songs that should be on these playlists and kind of make a user playlist of the Lyrical Lounge as well. So we can dive into that stuff in further detail in the future. But for now, I know to all of my zero viewers that I just kind of want to get into the flow, get into the habit of hosting a podcast. So the other thing that I want to mention as well, just in case there are any people that come back to these early podcasts that I am releasing and do happen to listen through, then I want to also just shout out where I'm going to be doing my live streams for the foreseeable future. I live stream my studio sessions when I'm beat making, when I'm producing. I live stream that to YouTube. The channel is my Charles Taylor channel. And so I'm going to keep the Lyrical Lounge content separate from the Charles Taylor content, which is like kind of my just all artist things that I do there. So yeah, again, links in the description, follow down below, blah blah blah. Enough of that rambling. Like always, I have 3 topics to discuss for today, and I do want to get very specific about these topics. However, I'm going to keep it a little bit vague because just one of these topics alone I could do like 6 or 7 episodes on as well. And speaking of like carrying on and episodes getting too long, we are going to come in and set a timer to ensure that I don't accidentally go too long. So what are we going to do? Let's say we set a timer for, yeah, I think a 30-minute podcast is acceptable. That's acceptable. Boom. Sweet. So, um, so the first topic that I want to talk about today, the thing that I keep kind of thinking about throughout this past week, is emotional control, like controlling your emotions, and how does that relate to life as a beat maker. Um, and there's a couple examples that I could think of off the top of my head. And these are examples that, of course, I've experienced within the last week, and constantly all the time I experience these things. But I think I'm not the only one to have disputes with others, like your partner, for example. You know, sometimes me and my partner, we have different disputes, especially when it comes to like the care of our son, or just, you know, like day to day little nuanced things. Or for another example, you know, I'm having disputes with my landlord about different things here and there. And one thing that I wasn't able to escape, and I don't think any of us really were able to escape the news of what happened over this past week here in the end of May 2020 with George Floyd, the George Floyd situation, the murder of George Floyd. So that kind of reminded me just how, like, it doesn't really matter who you are, it doesn't matter what you're doing. There are certain societal events that occur, and you cannot escape interacting with these events and having an emotional reaction to different societal events. And like, I would have normally put, I still would have put that situation in, I'm talking about societal events impacting your emotions when it comes to producing music. What I would have said 2 weeks ago was, of course, the corona situation, our coronavirus situation. But of course, this whole George Floyd thing overshadows that. And these types of situations have come up in the past. I'm here in Canada, hearing about them from the States and stuff. I've witnessed these things on the news and through different social media outlets and stuff like that, of innocent black men, innocent black people, indigenous people being oppressed and being murdered in cold blood for fucking nothing. And you know, normally I it's just another news story to me, because like I've heard these things. This shit has happened time and time again, and it's not somebody that I know personally. It's not some situation that I was present for. It's just another fucking news story. And there's shit that happens in the world that is terrible, and of course, any sane, normal, empathetic human being is not going to enjoy hearing those stories, and should indeed have an emotional reaction to them. And of course I do. But honestly, other than being like, oh fuck, that, you know, I'm disheartened once again, this is shitty, why does the world work like this shouldn't happen, besides those running through those thoughts and then moving on with whatever is happening in my day, I don't really get that affected by hearing those stories. I don't know why, or all the questions that someone might ask after I say a statement like that. I don't have the fucking answers for you. I just know that normally these stories don't really affect me that much in terms of an emotional response, but for whatever fucking reason, seeing the situation that happened with George Floyd really fucking pissed me off. Like, a lot. Like, I don't remember watching a news story in the past and being like physically upset, like wanting to break shit, like just fucking angry. And I know that there's more to this story than meets the eye. But yeah, like that situation really pissed me off. And that is where this kind of whole idea of me wanting to talk about controlling your emotions when it comes to producing music stems from. And then there's just other things as well that aren't super like generational and as complex. It's just like the small things that happen on a day to day when things are not going your way, and that impacts you in emotional stance. Quick story for myself. I don't know if it was within this last week or maybe a week and a half ago, whatever the case. Um, just as I'm configuring my home setup perfectly and everything's working together and I'm on a roll, making improvements, things are happening. Of course, I fucking spill coffee on one of my MIDI controllers and now the shit doesn't fucking work. And yeah, I'm still pissed off about it. So it's like just small things like that, or you go to put something away and you think you put it on the shelf and it's only half on and it kind of falls off and breaks, or little things like that. So small things, societal events, and like just like arguments with others. Those are like three hard examples that I can think of where you're gonna have an emotional response to being in that situation, kind of regardless of who you are, no matter how stoic you think you're living your life. It's just normal to have an emotional reaction to it. Most of those manifest for me recently with anger. Some people feel deflation, they feel less than. Some people feel other ways. But let's talk about when those situations occur and you find yourself in them, specifically as a beat maker, as a music producer. Do you how does that impact you? What happens next, sort of thing? Well, I can't really speak for the general because I'm part of that world and part of that group, beat makers and music producers. But I can really only speak for myself, to be honest. So for me, Charles Taylor, when those things happen, it affects my music producing very negatively, very bad, in the sense that, like, if I am too emotional, too strung out on whatever emotion it is, could be sadness, could be anger, it could be elation, like just way too fucking happy, coming in to make a beat. 9 times out of 10, if I'm leaning towards one emotion and really just over consumed by that emotion, the results of that production are not necessarily going to come out too great. I'm going to come back later when I'm not feeling that same emotion, and those results I will question for sure. So I've noticed that for myself, and that's why I'm like putting the question out there. Well, like, Should you control your emotions? Should you attempt to control these emotions knowing that it has an impact on the quality of music that you produce? Or I should say, I produce. I don't have an answer for that. It's a question. Um, if the answer is yes, you should try to control, well, how the fuck do you do that, you know? How do you do that? How do I go from like, okay, so I have, a few minutes to kill in between putting my son to bed and coming into the studio to work on some stuff. So I'm going to watch a YouTube video and then I find out and learn the whole George Floyd story. How do I then proceed to come into the studio and produce music, even if I wanted to be like, okay, I'm gonna roll with this emotion. I'm gonna use this emotion and how I'm feeling I want to be represented in sound. I think I often take that approach. I also think that the past versions of myself would be in the mindset of saying, having raw emotions like that, bringing those into the studio is what the music creation is all about. That's what it's all about. Why are you trying to hide that thing? Why are you trying to hide those emotions? Like, let it all out. I just don't know for myself specifically if that's really the best idea. That's what I've done in the past, and I honestly like don't really enjoy the results of the productions when I'm just coming in too strung out on emotions. If I'm a little bit more level headed, I find that I'm better able to make certain decisions that are, I guess, wise decisions. Like sometimes you need to keep rolling with the sound and keep doing manipulations and sound design with the sound that you're working with, and you work with it, you get it to a point where it's working, not necessarily it's working in the context of the song that you're working on, or maybe because you've sound designed enough, now you have an idea in your head of how a song can develop from that sound. That could potentially, the decisions that are involved in working through that process could be heavily affected by those emotions. And maybe the best thing is not to be focused on producing this like super angry sounding piece of music. Maybe I should be working on something else. I don't know. These are really just me speaking my thoughts and questions out loud. And I know a lot of this probably doesn't even make sense. It just rambles. But that's what it is. In order to kind of, in order to not have my emotions drive my productivity or lack thereof, there's two things that I can say I have subconsciously and consciously been doing in my semi-recent life. And I think these things are for the better. So the first thing that comes to mind is just like fucking taking a breather. Just when I was hearing about the story from Minneapolis, I think it is, I literally like just had to go outside and stop. I wasn't doing anything. I was just watching a video, but I had things lined up in my head of what to do next in life. Do this, like work on this in the studio, and then go do chores or whatever the case was. I just put all of that to the side and was like, I need to step outside, breathe some fresh air, and like literally try to settle down because I'm just too emotional right now. So I've taken that approach a few times now with different other situations as well. Before coming into the studio, I just take a moment to not necessarily like get rid of that emotion fully, because by now I'm sure most of you have uh, thought about responses to some of these statements that I've been making, on how like maybe a response would be, Charles, like you gotta utilize that emotion. You gotta get it out in the music, and even if it's not the best thing that you've ever produced, you don't have to save it, you don't have to fucking keep it, but to just go through the exercise of letting it out. That's how you get rid of the emotion, or whatever the case is. Yeah, I hear you, and I kind of agree with that in a sense, but again, like it's just seems like a waste of time for me now. I'm not trying to just simply express emotion through sound. Because if I wanted to do that, if I just wanted to be like, oh, I'm fucking angry, then I'm gonna go and listen to music. I'm not gonna go and make something. There's too many creative decisions involved in the making of something, that by the time you've gotten through phase one of those decisions, the emotion that you've been riding is gone for me, right? Like, I can't be like, oh, I'm fucking angry, I'm gonna make an angry song, and then come in here, and by the time I finally have crafted and picked a sound that best fits the anger that I'm feeling, and I need to go into do the beat arrangement, or to start engineering, or to add drums, or to layer, or whatever the case is, that emotion, that pure anger that I was feeling coming into the production has now subsided, and I'm into a different space. So now I'm trying to take this angry sounding sound and bring it into a new emotional space that I'm feeling. So I guess for me, at least in my productions right now, it's not as fluid as me and my emotions. My emotions change faster than I can produce. Maybe that's a goal to try and strive for us producers out there, to get to a workflow point where you are able to kind of roll with however you are feeling and really get those thoughts out there. I have seen people do that, not in person. I've seen some videos of different producers just working in their studio and being like, okay, I'm feeling this way, let me, and they, you know, but I've always kind of thought that in order to like transcribe your emotion to a progression, you need to have some classical training involved. I don't know. Do you? I don't know. You tell me. Anyways, the long and short of this whole controlling emotions thing, for me, the reason why I wanted to speak on it is to just kind of wander through that thought process in my brain, asking the question, how does emotional responses impact your music productions? So that's something I'm going to sit with and think about for a while now. 10 minutes left, eh? Or 10, yeah, 10 minutes left. So, one thing that I do find more productive than just going out and being like, whatever emotion I enter the studio with, that's what I'm going to try to create sonically. It's great when that happens, but there's more productive things that I find for myself, and I think other beat makers, other music producers are going to find as well. And for me, the thing that really increases my productivity tremendously is doing producer challenges, doing these different challenges. The first ones that I can remember getting inspired by was the fact 10-minute challenge. You set the timer for 10 minutes, and it's kind of like a creative writing exercise, right? I don't know if you've had that experience in your schooling, but I did like maybe twice, where we had a cool enough English teacher to be like, hey, we're going to do a creative writing exercise. I don't give a fuck what you guys write. It doesn't have to be in relation to any book whatsoever. Literally, I'm just going to set the timer for 5 minutes, and you're going to start writing, and you don't stop writing. Do everything you can to just continue writing whatever is in your mind. And the first times I did that in the creative writing classes, I remember I was just like, this is like, I'm terrible at this, and I don't even really want to be good. Like, this is extremely uncomfortable for me to be like forced to write. And that must be how many producers feel when they take on the fact, 10-minute challenge. Set the timer for 10 minutes and make something. Whatever you make, sort of thing. So I think that was like the first inspiration for producer challenges that I was like, yo, I need to be doing that. The next one was Mass Appeal's Rhythm Roulette. If you don't already know, you're falling behind. You should know. They send a producer to a record shop, blindfold them. They pick 3 records, blindfolded obviously, come back to their studio, their home studio, wherever they produce, and they have to try and flip those records into something new and interesting and engaging in their style. And so I've done, my own versions of these, but I've also come up with a couple different challenges myself. And the reason why I think those are so important are because they actually bridge into my other topic that I wanted to get to, which is workflow in general, and more specifically like workflow integration for whatever tools you have at your disposal. For a long time I was just software. I didn't have hardware pieces of gear to use to produce music on. It's always just clicking a fucking mouse, and it sucked, to be honest. But that was the only way I was able to make music, so I'm gonna just do it. Why? Because I can. So these producer challenges, what they really end up doing is not, like I can take 3 random records and still come up with a hit, or just I can make a beat in 5 minutes, bro. Like, I don't give a fuck how long it takes you to make a beat. Is the beat dope? That's what matters, right? And so doing these challenges really just kind of like, think of it as like ironing a shirt or whatever. Like, it irons out the creases in your workflow that you probably don't even know are there, right? All of the wrinkles in your workflow that you may know are there, but you just don't want to take the time to, or you have a hurdle in your workflow, and by doing these challenges you end up discovering a workaround, a solution to these hurdles that you have. That's always been the result for me for doing these challenges. I've always ended up learning something new, and 9 times out of 10, the thing that I learn is extremely useful in my productions going forward. So I'm big on these producer challenges, and I'm going to mention today the 2 challenges that I've been doing recently. And I'm mentioning them now because I just have finished them, and I'm happy, very happy to finish them. The first challenge that I was doing is my Talking About Practice series. So I have some instrumental, I don't know if, maybe I probably should have maximized myself. I think I was in this view the whole time. But we're going to come back to this view anyways, because we're going to come over to my Spotify account, and I'm going to do shameless self-promotion here. And I'm going to find... there we go. Artists, and I'm going to find myself here. Oh, maybe not. Oh, there we go. And boom. So I have this Talking About Practice series. This is the first one that I did. I have released 2 of them, and I've been working on my 3rd project here. This is number 2. So this Talking About Practice series came to fruition because I had, at the time of doing the first one, I just had so many beat ideas, and I didn't know what to do with them. Nobody that I knew, no rappers that I knew, no vocalists that I knew really wanted to use my music in any way whatsoever. But I was like, hey, I thoroughly enjoy a lot of these. And some of them are just kind of sitting there waiting for some fresh ears to be like, oh, that's kind of dope, but this isn't. Let's change this, and then do an arrangement of the beat, and we have a song magically. So it just needed to be like, they're just all ideas that could absolutely develop into something further, or maybe they're just solid as they are. Nonetheless, it's a lot of ideas. And so I started going through them, and I realized oh shit, I'm close to 100 beats here of ideas. So I just decided, okay, let's make 100 beats. Let's finish it off. And I made 100, and then said, all right, I'm going to go through all 100 of them, and whatever is dope and I like when I hear it back again, after the initial session, then I'm going to keep it. I'm going to put it on the fucking album, and I'm going to release it. Let's see how many we end up with after that. And boom, 35, and half of these are transition pieces. So it's funny that they whittle down from 100 to 35. And let's find out on Talking About Practice 2. I ended up with 11 beats that I kept out of that 100. So the whole purpose of that, make 100 beats and then whatever's dope, put it on an album, is not to be hey, look at me, I made a ton of music, because 100 beats is really not that much. But doing the 100 beats, think about 100 sessions. How much are you going to learn in those 100 sessions? Where are you going to be at the end of it compared to where you were at the beginning? And what's going to be important at the other end of it? So for me, what's been happening for number 3, awesome. What's been happening for Talking About Practice number 3 is that I got my MPC live. I purchased my first external standalone piece of music gear to produce on. With that said, I know that my time is counting down and I don't give a fuck. We're going to continue and go past our theoretical 30 minutes here because I can. Anyways, I want to finish this thought and then bridge into my last point, which is like specifically the MPC Live integration with Ableton Live is my third topic that I wanted to talk about. So the second topic, I'll just finish up on the producers challenges by saying that I made the 100 beats on the MPC Live. When I first started those 100 beats, I have never produced before on the MPC, on any sampler ever, on any drum machine, on any fucking machine that's used to make music other than a computer, other than a DAW. I've never made music on before. So yeah, there's a learning curve, and I know that like right off the bat I'm not gonna make something hot right away. Like I'm probably gonna hear those beats in the future, the first few that I make on this machine, and be like, oh my god, those are terrible. So to help go through that process, for me, I chose to do the Talking About Practice 3, make 100 beats, and at the end of it, I should be able to know what I need to know in order to produce on that machine. If I cannot produce a beat on that machine at the end of 100 attempts, then I fail as a producer. I fucking suck. I need to move on and do something else with my life. So I'm super happy because I can indeed produce on this machine, and I actually enjoy that beat number 100. And there's going to be lots of others. So now where I am on this, in this process of this instrumental album, the beats are done. Now it's time to just go back and select the best of the best and to mix them and then put them on a project, and that's it. So that's what's working on next. So not only is this idea of talking about practice, not only do you get the benefit of like an minimizing your learning curve in making beats, not only is it beneficial to working out all of the kinks in your beat making process for those 100 beats, but if you're an independent musician like myself, or you're just into this world and you enjoy the different stages involved in music creation, now you have 100 beats at your disposal that you can work on song arrangement, you can work on a mix down, you can work on engineering. You can take those ideas and squash them down. You can take an idea and squash it down into a single sound and then start sound designing and come up with something completely new and different. So that this process is not just beneficial for those first 100 beats, but like in the future after, you have material to work with, and you also have the capability, the knowledge, the understanding, and the actual physical know-how to produce something new. So I'm super proud of this, not just this project, but I'm proud of sticking with this idea. And I like a lot of the results that have come out of both projects from the past, and I'm excited to see what happens for number 3. Anyways, so the other challenge that I have been doing besides my Talking About Practice series was for the last 30 beats in that series, I specifically chose to do 30 beats in 30 days, and I limited my sampling source to one place. So I have my my own personal sound library that continues to grow through the years, and I add to and blah 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 whatever. But what I realized is that sound library is primarily just focused on like drum sounds. I have lots of good drum sounds, and the MPC Live is enabling me to utilize them in a new and different way than I ever have before, and to understand what is good about the drum library that I have and what is not so good about it. So I haven't really been like shopping out new drum sounds for quite some time, but I'm always looking for samples. And sampling in 2020 is a topic on itself, an episode on its own that I definitely need to share lots of thoughts on. But one of the services that I gained access to after purchasing the MPC Live was the service Splice. And Splice is a sample and loop service. So they provide loops that you can download, upload, they are uploaded from some fairly credible sources, and then also I think users who wish to upload to their service as well. So it's an interesting thing, and we'll definitely dive into more of the discovery that I have found through making 30 beats with Splice. But that's what I did. I did a 30 for 30 beats in 30 days using Splice, and to finish off my Talking About Practice series. So that's really all what I wanted to say. I probably could have described that situation much better, but that's not what this podcast is about. It is just me speaking my thoughts. If you have questions about any of that stuff, please just let me know, and I even include my email in the descriptions of these videos, so that if you prefer, which I prefer, then you can just send me an email with questions or comments, whatever, and we can kind of start a dialogue that way and continue on in the future. We talked about a lot of the benefits that can happen from doing different producer challenges, but another thing is integrating different workflows. That's how I have it written. But what I really mean by that is, so for, like I said, I've produced on a DAW, I've produced on Ableton Live my entire music producing hobby career. So I know that DAW, I know that system very well. And I even take that a step further and restrict myself to only using the plugins and virtual instruments that come with Ableton Live. So I don't ever, nowadays, I don't use any third-party plugins except for different metering plugins that just give me visual information about what is happening with my sound. There's no sound manipulation going on through third-party plugins that I use. So knowing that system very well and enjoying it to an extent, I knew that there's no point in buying the MPC and being I'm never going to touch a computer ever again to make music. Bye computers, I'm only going to ever produce on the MPC. That's just a foolish thing to think of. Even if that was the case, what most people would end up doing is producing on the MPC and then sending those files, sending that information to a mix engineer, to an artist, to a mastering engineer, and they're just going to end up throwing those sounds into software anyways, and taking it from there. So, and I don't know if a lot of like producers really know that, but I digress. The MPC Live, I knew before even purchasing that the benefit of it for me is a faster, more physical way of getting my sound and beat ideas into the world. And then from there, I trust myself and I trust my knowledge of Ableton Live and my knowledge and skill set in sound engineering and sound design and mixing to take an idea and bring that to the next stage, develop that into an instrumental, develop that into something that goes beyond just an idea, just a beat idea. So doing those producer challenges really helped me discover. I definitely don't think I've solidified, but I have discovered how you can integrate a workflow between the MPC Live and Ableton Live. And I think that I've found a really great one. I can kind of bounce back and forth between the two with relative ease, not taking too much time away. And when I do take time away, when the workflow needs to be interrupted, when working with the MPC Live in coordination with Ableton Live, then I'm closer than ever by having those two work together to being able to live produce. When I was so ignorant and so dumb back in the day, and even up to recently, and I thought Ableton Live, the whole premise, the whole purpose, the idea behind this DAW was that you would be able to come up with beats on the go and make it musical. You're producing and you're not stopping to hit record, to record in something, and then stop once you've recorded your 4 bars, to go back to listen to it again just to make sure you didn't mess it up, and then you have to stop the sound once again. I thought that the whole live, because it was in the name, meant that, if I press power, if I turn this thing on, then I'm going to be producing, and somebody can be, here beside me, and they are the audience now, and they're going to hear a song go from start to finish without interruption is like the key stupid thing that I thought that's where production is headed. And it is true. I am now closer than ever to having live production to be able to do that. And I think that's been a goal of mine since I discovered Ableton Live, and have never been able to quite get there within the DAW alone. I soon discovered, after playing around with Ableton, that to simply just use Ableton alone and go from no sound to a finished song without interruption, just letting the music come from your soul, is damn near impossible. You're always going to need to stop and take a pause and rewind and go back and listen through and then re-record and edit the fucking editing. So yeah, doing those producer challenges showed me how these two pieces of gear that I have can link up in various different ways. And now I'm tasked with finding out how to seamlessly have a workflow where I can go from no sound to a finished beat and have that process be entertaining to another set of ears besides just my own. Because when you're the producer, you know what's going on. If you decide to hit that space bar to stop the sound or to start it again, you know you're doing that. And so you don't have to confine yourself to a rhythmic time of when to stop the sound or not. But that that just appeals to me so much. To like, I think that's like the top echelon of producers. If you can live produce a beat without losing rhythm, I think that says a lot about your production skills. So that's the journey I'm on. That's where I want to be. I want to be able to do that. And along the way, I'm going to mess up and record a couple podcasts and live stream these attempts at doing it. So if you want to support me along the way, follow me on all of my shit and support me on Patreon, basically. All of those links are going to be in the description. For any Patreon supporters, I don't know what to offer you. Please help me out and let me know what you would find of value that I could offer to you in return and in thanks for your support. I definitely won't be able to do the things in life that I want to do without that support. And I don't enjoy asking for that support, but here I am. If you have the funds to be doing so, to be a Patreon, it doesn't cost you too much at all. I have 3 different options currently speaking. You can subscribe for a $1, $5, or $10 tier options. So follow me on Patreon. Follow the Lyrical Lounge on Spotify, the Lyrical Lounge on Instagram. Like I said, I have a secondary YouTube channel, Charles Taylor, where I will be doing my live streams of my producing sessions. Don't forget, if you do want to contact me directly, you can email me at hostcharlestaylor@gmail.com. If you happened to go back in time to watch this podcast, I very, very much appreciate you and am shocked, to be quite honest. So thank you. With all that said, I think the only thing left to say is remember to drink water.